Privatized prisons in the United States make a lot of money off people that commit minor nonviolent crimes, and because of this, we have the highest number of prisoners in the world. According to the ACLU, mass incarceration in the United States is so bad that despite making up close to 5% of the global population, the U.S. has more than 20% of the world's prison population. Since 1970, the prison population in the U.S. has increased 500%, and according to the ACLU, 1 out of every 3 black boys born today can expect to go to prison in his lifetime, as can 1 out of every 6 Latino boys and 1 out of every 17 white boys. At the same time, women are the fastest growing incarcerated population in the United States. 3-strike policies that are implemented around the U.S. have nonviolent offenders in prison for decades or even life for committing crimes that should not be punished in this way. Prisons in the United States use the war on drugs as a tool to get as many people in prison as possible in order to increase profits. According to the Equal Justice Initiative, since the 1990s, the prison population in the United States has skyrocketed, and with that, more violence in prison and abuse from prison officers has been recorded. Many people who are in need of addiction treatment, mental health resources, disability resources, and suicide prevention are put into solitary confinement. Solitary confinement is not a cure for such ailments. The Equal Justice Initiative stated that more than half of all Americans in prison or jail have a mental illness. This statistic really highlights the fact that the United States prison system is a failing institution that does not serve the people well or solve any major problems in a meaningful way. Children as young as 8 years old can be charged as an adult in the United States. They can also be sent to jail for extreme amounts of time. It was only 2005 when the United States banned the death penalty for juveniles. And according to the Equal Justice Initiative, the U.S. is the only country in the world where kids as young as 13 can be sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. 70% of the children under the age of 13 that are sentenced to life imprisonment in the United States are children of color. An example of inhumane conditions in today's prisons is Rikers Island in upstate New York. According to the Equal Justice Initiative, Rikers has been ranked among the 10 worst jails in America. Journalists with the New York Times, the New Yorker, New York Magazine, and WNYC, and other determined advocates have investigated and exposed much of the violence, cruelty, and abuse at Rikers, where 80% of more than 7,500 people incarcerated have not yet been proven innocent or guilty of the crimes they are accused of. The prison is filthy and overrun with rats. The prisoners run the jail because it is so unorganized and corrupt. The prison system in the U.S. has a lot of holes that are exploited by both prison officers and prisoners alike. With the power of the COs, there's a lot of room for abuse to happen. Even for people that have not committed violent crimes, they are subject to random searches and restraining if the officer feels it is necessary, and more often than not, it is not necessary for the officer to use physical violence or force. The Equal Justice Initiative states that more incarceration does not reduce violent crime. Using prisons to deal with poverty and mental illness makes these problems worse. People leave overcrowded and violent jails and prisons more traumatized, mentally ill, and physically battered than they went in. In Alabama, the prison system is so far below standards that the U.S. Department of Justice has been investigating the Alabama prison system. With the corruption starting at the top, culture of impunity has been perpetuated inside the prisons of Alabama. In Tutwiler Prison for women, there has been a toxic sexualized environment that permitted staff to sexually abuse and harass the inmates, which has resulted in a lot of sexual assault and abuse. Because of the conditions in the prison system in the U.S. today, it seems that there is need for restructuring and redesigning the system. In other parts of the world, some countries are taking a step in the right direction. In places like Norway and some other European countries, the prison system is more like a university where prisoners are educated and reintegrated back into society so they can be good neighbors, get a good job, and stay out of prison. According to a BBC article on prisons in Norway, in the early 1990s, the ethos of Norwegian Correctional Service underwent a rigorous series of reforms to focus on less revenge and much more rehabilitation. Prisoners who had previously spent most of the day locked up were offered daily training and educational programs, and the role of the prison guards was completely overhauled. The prisoners are offered amenities that are widely available in the outside world. They are treated as equal humans and are given a chance to reintegrate back into society with an education and a good job. There are programs that can help people in trades like mechanics, woodworking, and welding. The BBC article states that the architecture of Halden Prison has been designed to minimize residents' sense of incarceration, to ease psychological stress, and to put in harmony with the surrounding nature. In the U.S., people are stuffed into small cells without privacy or any luxuries of the outside world. They are fed low-quality food and given strict hours. This environment is dehumanizing and perpetuates the criminal behavior of those who committed violent crimes and other serious or minor crimes. In the United States, it takes 6 weeks to train a prison officer, compared to the 2 or 3 years that an officer in Norway has to study to become a prison officer. Reforming the prison system is something that needs to happen so people who have committed crimes have a better chance of rebuilding themselves, reintegrating into society in a meaningful way for themselves and the people in their communities.